Welcome to week 7 of the Healthful Mind Programme. Today we are looking at being good enough. So if I ask you now, do you think you're good enough? Are you loved enough? Are you bright enough, clever enough, strong enough? Are you enough? Or do you run a bit of a dialogue through your head on doubts about who you are? Do you measure the way other people respond to you as a measure of your own self-worth? So, for instance, do you find that you do certain things to please others, but they don't do that in return for you? And therefore you think, what have I done wrong? Or why am I not good enough for them to treat me the way I treat them? Had someone the other day talk about pleasing someone who was maybe a little bit controlling, or we call it an abreaction, when someone throws their toys out of the pram because they don't get what they want. So children are really good at this. You know, will you go and clean your room? Or please go and clean your room. I'm not cleaning my room now. No, can you go and do it now? You always do this to me, thump, thump, thump around. Then, okay, enough, go and clean your room. And now they trash their room. Or they just, you're a horrible mother, I'm going to go and live with my dad, you know, things like that. And we call that an abreaction because somebody is kicking back against the discomfort of what you're asking them to do, even though what you are asking of them is something completely reasonable. Now, funnily enough, we kind of do this to ourselves through our personality patterns, but we reaffirm our personality patterns because when we were children, we learnt to be a certain way because that was how we got love or attention from our parents. So first, as you're going to find out, some of the personality patterns, having attention is our version of being loved, even if it's negative attention. So there's the problem person in this, the person that maybe becomes the rebel, or even, and I haven't actually written this in there because it's kind of a whole other thing, about some people actually become unwell because their parents will show them attention when they're unwell. So therefore there's a secondary gain there. And so when they feel they need comfort, then their body might become unwell in response to that. That's really a far deeper thing than just learning personality traits. So this week we are working on accepting ourselves for who we are. It is only then that we can also accept others for who they are. So these people that we are maybe trying to please or appease, as we established with my client, that are not responding in the way we would like them to, that's not our problem. That's their problem. Or it might be that, you know, they're not telepathic and they have no idea that when you're behaving this way, that you would like to have some love and affection back, especially as some of these patterns can drive us to be a little bit critical and judgmental. So remember, it is not the situation that counts, okay? It's not the situation that's the problem. It's the way that we deal with it that counts. And the way that we respond to it is down to our core beliefs and our core values. So we've looked at what others have done around us, and always without blame. You know, life happens, people manage the best they can. And actually, you've probably heard history repeating itself. Often our parents have behaved in a certain way because of the beliefs and the values that they have from their upbringing, and they don't know otherwise. And the whole point with all of these is, if you do not follow your beliefs and values, you feel really out of sync with the world. So we tend to keep doing it even if it doesn't serve us well, and it's been indoctrinated within us. So nature or nurture, how much is genetics and how much is the behaviour of our parents that has repeated itself. Some people do the absolute opposite of the parent. So if somebody's had a difficult upbringing, they feel that their parents were very they never had the time for them, or they didn't really listen, or maybe they didn't have much in the way of belongings, then somebody might go to the absolute opposite extreme, thinking this is how I will show my children I love them. But it might not always work, because the children might have another agenda, and again, the children don't know that that gift is being given to them, or whatever, or the time is being given to them because it tells them they're loved. Depends on what their own needs are. So it's very, very complex. But basically, from a child, nature or nurture, we learn by what's going on around us, and from that we create something that in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is called our map of the world. So if you had a map that completely made you understand how you should behave, what was appropriate in any situation, then that's what this is about. But appropriate doesn't always serve you well, because it depends on the underlying beliefs and values behind it. So I did an example here. You are on a bus and someone starts to sing loudly. Okay, imagine it. The people on the bus will have a whole variety of responses. Some people might be, oh, what do they think they're doing? Disturbing my peace. Are they mad? Are they stupid? How dare they? That's just rude. If you have a belief, oh my God, you shouldn't make a show of yourself in public, seen, not heard, but don't draw attention to yourself. You might be absolutely cringing at this, feeling embarrassed as if that person, I'm embarrassed for them. They don't know how to behave. And yet others might start clapping or smiling, laughing, singing along. Okay, one action, a whole multitude of behaviours and feelings and judgments around that. So it's not the person singing that's the problem. It's the way it makes you feel that will ultimately result in your experience of having someone singing on a bus. So I used this example because it's so innocuous. It's like, one, it probably hasn't happened, but I could use an example. I was at my beach hut the other day and I went for peace and quiet. I mean, we have beach huts because we like to sit there and relax and to look at the view. And then this young oik, I'll call him, with his great big speaker came up. He was talking to his dad. They stood dead in front of us for about an hour. And he was playing his woo, 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 woo music as loud as he could. That's what headphones are for. And the louder the music, the louder he talked. And I'm like sat there thinking, how dare he? Does he think we want to hear that? I couldn't move. It was my beach hut. I couldn't go and sit in front of someone else's beach hut. It wouldn't be the same. He could move. But when we were walking back to the car afterwards, we came across someone else who was sat on the back of a bench. Oh, that's breaking the rules. I'm a goody two-shoes here. You don't sit on the back of the bench with your feet on the bench, with his even bigger speaker that looked like something that, you wouldn't even have in your house. It was so big, or maybe a disco. And that's on the bench and it's even louder. And of course, people are looking. And that's what he wants. So that's a case of any attention is better than no attention. That made those people feel good. Look, yeah, Adele says rude. I thought very rude. Other people might think, oh, I quite like this music. But I didn't. And I wanted my peaceful Sunday afternoon on my deck chair in front of my beach looking at the sea. I did not want some noisy oik spoiling it for me. But did I do anything? No, because that also would be really out of my comfort zone to go and say to him, oi, you shouldn't be doing that. Because I like to think that I'm very inclusive and that I'm understanding of others. But I had to work on myself a little bit because I wanted to read my book and it was distracting my attention. So I had to tell myself that You know, this was my problem. It was my problem that I didn't like his behaviour. It was a public space. Yeah, so Georgia says she wouldn't want to do anything either. I actually said to the boyfriend, "You're going to go and have a word with him?" He said, "No, look at him. He's probably got a knife." And I went, "Of course he hasn't got a knife. He's about 14 years old. He's with his dad and they've got 2 younger kids playing on the sand, you know." And he said, "Yeah, but he looks a little crazy." I went, "Well, yeah, he does look a little ADHD the way he's moving. But, you know, really, we probably could have gone up and said, 'Could you just turn it down a little bit?'" Chances are he wouldn't have done it either. Anyway, that's the whole point, that our beliefs and our values determine not just our behaviour, but how we interpret others' behaviour. And there's always a whole variety of ways. So there's no right and wrong. This is not about black and or basically our black and white thinking that we develop because of our behaviour patterns should be more flexible. And if we felt that we were strong enough, good enough, kind enough, whatever, a lot of these behaviour patterns that we're going to look into wouldn't even happen in the first place. Adele says, "I'd have a go. That's not appropriate. Just wrapped up in his own world." Yeah, so having a go is again very much a reflection of your own irritation and your own values, and probably does not. Yeah, Adele says she's worked with a lot of teenagers, so it quite possibly wouldn't work. If you go up and try and be cool, go, "Yo, brother," you know, how about you turn the tunes down? I mean, they'd probably go, cringe, 55-year-old giving me a hard time. I don't have respect. Maybe he doesn't have respect for authority or whatever. Anyway, we could go into this for ages. But basically, when did you learn to feel this way? So we've looked at that before in terms of PTSD and anxiety and trauma. But when did you learn to think what's right and wrong? Because you were taught it. It's what you was indoctrinated around you, and the significant people within your life, whether that be your teachers, your parents, and everything, all of those authority figures, and whether you kicked back against that or whether you embraced it will again affect how you are now. And another aspect is the other family members. So if I'm talking to someone that comes from a family of, say, 7 kids, you've got a wide variety of personality traits within there because they are all vying for attention. And if someone is the attention seeker and they're going to do it in a naughty way, somebody else will become the goody two-shoes because it's like the polar opposite. And so really we're all manipulating as children. We're all learning to manipulate our parents to figure out how we get our needs how we get our needs met the best. But as adults, we shouldn't try and manipulate other adults, but we still do it. And we also can feel manipulated by them because our beliefs and behaviours, when we feel they've got other ones, then we may feel they are trying to make us behave a certain way. And if we say someone makes us feel a certain way, that gives them all the power. That says they would have to change for me to feel better. But if you felt completely confident with who you were, then you wouldn't need, or you wouldn't respond to that. You'd be quite confident to say, I see your point of view, but I don't feel the same. So again, it's not what somebody says, but it is the way we feel about that. It's not what somebody does, it's the way we respond to that. So today is all about coming into us taking control, us standing in our place of strength, by recognizing that we are enough. We're not perfect. There's a perfect personality pattern, but nobody is perfect. We are all flawed in some way, and we are definitely not a mirror image of anybody else in our life. Otherwise we would be robots. So we have to learn to adapt our map of the world to fit what works for us, and to have that grey area that says, yeah, maybe I don't have to feel like this or think like this in this situation. But the more in our absolute hearts and our heads and our core that we believe that we are good enough now as adults, because we may not have done as children, but as adults we have that power to make that decision for ourselves, and we can find the evidence. So today's hypnosis, or this week's hypnosis, is about being enough. But in that exercise, you look at, when recently have I felt like I was good enough? And it can be the tiniest thing, it doesn't matter. Capturing that, can you go back then to the earliest time where you felt loved, you felt safe, you felt you were good enough? And then it's like, well, somewhere in some events in between, you decided you weren't. But as you've already proven that you still can feel enough now in the right environment, then you must be enough. You know, the proof is there. So then we really harness that, because if we can't find the evidence, we'll probably always argue with ourselves. So sometimes we have to kind of make that. So the same way that you were looking for the things that gave you pleasure, you were looking for health, you were looking for happiness at the beginning. Now you're looking maybe a little bit deeper of that and saying, it's okay that I feel that way. I'm pretty good, actually. You know, other people do like me. They are showing me love. They do other things. So focusing on what you do have rather than what you don't have, and then harnessing it. And then there is a shorter meditation, and I've also put in there the words to this, which, like we did opening up to health and happiness at the beginning, we are now, I am loved, I am loving, I am lovable. So those three things, vitally important to instill that within us. So I think the meditation is only like 6 minutes long or something. So, and I would encourage you to print out those words and to look at them if this is something that really, really resonates with you, and to start. So Georgia says she's looking forward to this meditation. Hooray. Yes, it's lovely. And of course, feeling is believing. Always got to feel it. If we don't feel it, if we say, I'm loved, and we go, no, I'm not, well, it's not going to help us. So that's why we look for the evidence, and we think, what is that feeling of loved? You might want to think about how you love someone else, a child, a pet, a parent, anything. Who do I love? And what does that feel like? And now I'm into the tune of love. I can give it to myself. It's a feeling. Why should you not give it to yourself? Because you are worth it. Absolutely. So it is healing. We are in the resolve, but this is also really becoming how we want to become. Georgia says, I'm getting better at feeling is believing. Yes, believing is being. When you feel it, you will be it. Okay, so what have I got on my notes? So it is important as well to understand the nervous system activity here. Of course, that when we're in a place where we feel fear or judgment or unsafe in any way, we're in our sympathetic nervous system, and then we become defensive. So if we are ever defensive about our own beliefs, it's because it's uncomfortable. And so we feel we have to fight our corner, as it were. It's important to remember that just because we learnt it, it does not make it true, okay? Because one person can learn one thing and another person can learn something else entirely about the same thing. Okay, 2 + 2 is 4. You learnt that, that's true. But when it comes to feeling, beliefs and values, you know, the fundamental ones, yes, don't go and hurt someone else intentionally. But, you know, on the majority of these, that they're not set in stone. They are a perception. Okay, so let's look at, so I had a list of various things when asking, are you enough? So, are you good enough? How do you respond? Do you feel you meet others' expectations, or do you disappoint them? Do you disappoint yourself? Do you feel others give you do you feel others don't give you the love and support that you desire? Or do you feel taken advantage of, disrespected, disappointed, resentful, anything like that? Do you feel you should have to behave in a certain way that feels uncomfortable to you just to fit in with others? Okay. Because you're fearful that they will dislike you otherwise. So some people really morph into the people that they're hanging around, and that can be because they don't trust their own judgment. They don't feel like they're good enough. So, but these people, especially, the popular kids at school, if I mimic their behavior, if I dress like them, if I talk like them, if I behave like them, they will accept me, and therefore I will feel good enough. But often the person doesn't feel good enough because it's not natural to them. It's against their map of the world. Do you believe you can't do things that others can do? So do you have limiting beliefs? Are you limiting yourself? You may also find that you're harsh on yourself. So these are all signs that your personality patterns are not supporting you. So your personality patterns come basically, what were you rewarded for? I seem to have the wrong teeth in again. What were you rewarded for as a child? And what did your primary caregiver teach you about love and security? Okay, and love and safety. So to ensure that you feel loved in the world, you set these personality patterns. It's what worked for you. But if it's not working now, the strange thing is we keep trying to do it. And yet Einstein's theory of insanity was doing the same thing over and over and expecting something different. So if you are not feeling how you want to feel, if you keep doing it, you're going to still keep feeling the way that you're doing, the way that you're feeling. But if you change a belief behind it or change what you're doing, then you can find a better way. And that's what we're going to do today. So the main personality patterns that we are going to look at are helper, achiever, perfectionist, controller, anxiety, and one that doesn't always come up, but it's a really big one, problem personality. Okay, so let's look at the helper. And I often come across helpers and they have burnt themselves out trying to look after others but neglecting their own needs. The warning here is that there is always something more that you could do for someone else. Okay, but it doesn't mean just because you can do it that you should do it. So we always look out for must-haves, should do, shouldn't do, these judgments. So where do you draw the line with a helper? Helpers define themselves by meeting others' needs to meet their own needs. Okay, if I look after them, I am worthy. Helpers can lose contact with what they really want because they're so busy trying to please or appease others, and they feel guilty if they put themselves first. They feel guilty if they say no to someone, and even sometimes if they make time for their own well-being. And yet this is a case of you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first so you can then help others, because you're no good to anyone burnt out. We may think that we are pleasing others, but what we are doing is appeasing them when we are managing others' selfish, controlling behaviours. So that's a fear of what will happen if we don't do it. But then we do more than we really want to do. We've been manipulated. We give and do for others when deep down what we want is for them to do the same for us. But they're not mind readers and they didn't know. They just thought, great, thanks, she's going to cook the dinner every night. Great, she's going to do all the childcare. I've got away with that one. Not always the case. And they will keep getting away with it if you let them, because like my husband used to say, he used to make a mess and he was impossible at clearing it up. So say he dropped something, he'd be like, oh, I don't know what to do. And so I'd clean it up and he'd watch me and I'd go, this is not a spectator sport. And he'd be, yeah, but you like doing it. No, I don't. But I'm a bit of a controller and I knew that he wouldn't do the job properly. So, and then I'd have to go and do it again. So, yes, it was satisfying my controlling need, but I was really resentful of the fact that he wasn't capable of doing it. Seeing how this works. And I also am a bit of a helper, but not so much these days. I've learnt my boundaries. We believe people are dependent upon us and expect things from us. So someone being dependent upon us makes us feel good. But I don't know if I've told you the story of the butterfly. A butterfly, to gain its strength, has to fight its way out of its chrysalis. And so there's a person watching a butterfly trying to come out of its chrysalis and they think they're helping. So they cut the chrysalis open and subsequently the butterfly comes out deformed. He can't fly, he can't walk properly. So the person thought they were helping, but actually they weren't, because that butterfly didn't learn for himself or didn't build the strengths that he needed to be the person he wanted to be, or the butterfly that he wanted to be. So it's actually quite disempowering for others to do for them all the time. And I know as parents, we can all be a bit guilty of this. We see it as being a good parent if we really help our children. We don't like to see them in discomfort or struggling with something, so we help them. But actually they learn by figuring things out themselves, as do husbands. But I don't think I really gave him the chance. And then he accused me of damaging his self-esteem. But, you know, we've all got to take responsibility for our own actions. He used to say the same about the decorating. That's why he didn't do any of that. He said, I liked it. But I said, no, I just like the place looking nice. So again, different map of the worlds. They just didn't match. So yeah, basically that's the helper pattern. They do too much. Their boundaries aren't good. They see themselves, if I do this, then people will love me. And I see that a lot, as I say, within larger families, that somebody is the helper. And then everybody does rely on them and everybody goes to them with all of their problems. But they've created this. And yes, one side of them, it makes them feel good, but it burns them out, because then they feel burdened by other people's problems. And then they can't let things go. And it's really uncomfortable to not help then. So in that case, you have to work on changing your feelings about not helping, not saying, well, if I keep doing this, in the end, I'm going to feel better. No, if you keep doing this, you'll do more and more, and then you'll end up burnt out. Okay, the achiever kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? They all do. These are your measures. In your mind, you could always do better. So contentment and satisfaction is hard to find, because you measure your worth on what you achieve. So we talk about high achievers. They tend to do very well. So it serves them well, or so they think. So I often relate a story. So the student that wants to get an A star, okay, they feel if they don't get an A star, they're not good enough. That maybe they have parents that when they get their report, they go, oh, well, why didn't you do so well there? How did other people do? So the achiever compares themselves to others, but also to their own high standards. One of the worst things for an achiever would be to fail. Fail would be mortifying, because what would others think? So they're often highly aware of what others think, but also they can be right up their own arses in when they see what they have achieved, and then be judgmental on others, like, well, why can't they achieve that? You know, I'm better than them. Adele says, no, that's me, need to achieve, uncomfortable if I'm coasting. Yeah, okay. So, but it can leave us feeling very, very dissatisfied. We never get to that point where we can just go, oh, my life is quite good. We don't relax. I say we, am I one of these people? No, I don't think I am. My sister was one of these people, and I kind of went the other way. It's important for me to come across as knowledgeable. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I was frustrated because I was ill for so long and I couldn't achieve, and I felt like my body and my brain weren't on the same pathway here, and I found that very frustrating. So now I have no desire to be the best or to get an A star. I just have a desire to do a good job and to see good results. Okay. Oh, Adele says, thanks very much. I hope I don't come across like that. No, what I'm saying is some people, so if you think about the high flyer, they can really, status can seem like everything. They've got to have the visual, the best suit, the best car. See, look, I've assumed this is a man. But they can be really out of touch with their own needs and desires. So Georgia says, I didn't get many GCSEs and I didn't really mind. I knew I wanted to be a beauty therapist, a hairdresser. Yeah, so you were following your dream, but you weren't doing that to the detriment of your own well-being. So we all have dreams, we all have goals, we all have desires, but what we don't want to do is punish ourselves if we don't achieve them. I went to the New Forest and had ice creams and tea and cake, but was really happy school had finished. Yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. So actually that's a really interesting one, because that's like, are you moving towards or are you moving away from? At that point you were moving away from. As long as school finishes, I'm happy. It was more important to get rid of school than it was to achieve a certain something else. Whereas for other people, they've just got to keep learning, keep doing. They're so blinkered on the prize, if you like, that they're completely oblivious to everything else that's going on around them. And that is also very detrimental to their own well-being, because they also can go to burnout and they can be very, very disconnected to their bodies. Now, we all want to achieve things. That doesn't make us an achiever pattern, okay? With all of these, there's something of all of us in all of this, okay? But the key is, do you feel bad if you're not achieving? And if you feel bad that you're not achieving, you need to work on changing the feelings of feeling bad rather than achieving something else. Because this is like, as Einstein says, keep doing the same thing and think you're going to feel differently. You're not, because you're an achiever. It's never going to be enough. At what point, again, like the helper, there's always someone else to help. Achiever, there's always someone else, another way to achieve. So they may go and do a degree, and then they do a master's, and then they do a PhD, and then where do you go from there? It's like, and it can seem like the world is crashing in if they fail. You can't fail. Just says, adamant to drive, and I was so upset when I failed my theory. That was you going towards something, and the consequences of not doing it were disappointing. But that's not the same as a self-judgment saying, well, I won't be loved because I didn't achieve it. But an achiever sees the status that they get from having those results or having that good job as being what makes them worthy. And so, for instance, when someone retires and they've had that high status, they can find it really difficult to not have that status anymore, and they might keep harping back to what they did do. Don't worry, there are 4 more degrees higher than a PhD. Your dad had them all. Yeah, my dad was a high achiever. My sister is a high achiever, but my dad didn't really, he cared for himself, but he never wanted the status as such. He just he just loved it, really. Yeah, your dad in mathematics, mine in mass spectrometry. Had you ever heard of that? I know what a mass spectrometer is, because when I was a kid, I used to get to go to his place of work, which was London University, and play with the mass spectrometer and find out more about it. But we've all got science brains, so in my family. So it's, again, nature or nurture. There's a certain amount, but, you know, we're all individuals. We got to find our own way. Okay, what else have we got? Sorry, I've got a really itchy nose today. What else have we got? So achievers can treat their bodies like a machine, often neglecting to give it an MOT when it needs one. Less than our best or less than others is not good enough, so that can feel uncomfortable. And yes, ultimately failure is not an option. Right, the perfectionist pattern. Perfection doesn't exist. So sorry, perfectionists, you are on a hide to nothing here. You will never feel good enough if you think everything has to be perfect, because what is perfect? In most of our lives, we can't measure perfect. A lot of perfectionists get OCD, as do controllers, which is the next one. So for a perfectionist, their self-worth is tied into getting it right and wrong. Very, very strong moral judgments, but mainly upon themselves. They can feel very uncomfortable with people that just are laid back and don't really care. So if a perfectionist, say, is a boss or actually a worker, if other colleagues of theirs are not as articulate or not as much as a perfectionist in doing their job, then it can feel very, very uncomfortable, and you can get very irritated by that. There needs to be a grey area. So black and white thinking doesn't work, and that's kind of an all or nothing. There's nothing general in a perfectionist. Adele, me too. History and language were my best subjects. I also struggled with driving test, 5th attempt, but moved around. Okay. Striving for the impossible, and as there's no such thing as perfect, they keep striving. And again, this is often because they are trying to move away from their discomfort. Unlike the achiever that is moving towards a goal, I will feel better when I have that. The perfectionist is like, not achieving perfection is too uncomfortable, therefore I have to keep going, I have to find another way. So they might be less set on that actual goal, but more set on the more focused on the finer detail of everything. So if a job is worth doing, it's worth doing properly. If we feel unsafe and in danger when something is wrong. So that's important as well. So again, an OCD behaviour, that if you, for somebody that maybe sees a mark on the wall or dirt on the surface, they have to clean that off because it's too uncomfortable for them for it to be wrong. If others don't do things to your standards, you feel disappointed and frustrated, and then we'll slip into the controller behaviour. So you can see perfectionist, controllers and anxiety patterns all get muddled up here. So the controller pattern, anxiety is trying to control things that we cannot control. So controllers will often seem intolerant as they show anger and frustration rather than acknowledge their own anxiety. Okay, anxiety comes from trying to control things we cannot control. Okay, so for perfectionist, that's a significant thing as well. But yeah, for the controller, they are desperately trying to manage their own emotions by getting in control of things. This is me. The worst thing that anybody can do for a controller is to hold a surprise something, a surprise party, or worse still, because that's only for a short duration, a surprise holiday. How could I have a surprise holiday without knowing, well, what did I need to pack? I pack everybody's bag when I go on holiday. I make sure that they've all got their toothbrushes, their pants and socks. You know, heaven help us if we forgot something, we'd have to go and buy it. I cannot pack lightly, okay? Kind of got everything for every situation. But yeah, if someone just took me to an airport and had packed a bag for me and said, right, we're getting on a plane, I'd be like, oh my God, no, because I haven't done all that preparation that I would need to do to make sure this holiday was just as I wanted it to be. Now, I complain when other people don't take charge. I'm like, oh, I'm the one that has to organise everything. But I kind of dig my own grave here. So we tend to take on too much as we don't trust others. Being in control makes us feel safe in the world, so we feel unsafe. So yeah, Georgia, this is you. Yeah, a lot of anxiety pattern are also controlling, as I say, because anxiety is trying to control what we can't control. Yes, damn all these other people that don't do things the way we want them to. On the outside, we may appear really tough. I think I'm a little bit like that. We can put the barriers up, right? Do not go there. Like, rather than face the fact that we could feel hurt inside by the fact that others haven't done what they were meant to do because they didn't know they were meant to do it. Because we fear being vulnerable. We don't want others to see us as vulnerable. So we put this barrier of protection up. We don't want to be taken advantage of. Who doesn't? Packing is the pits. I struggle with it, especially in the UK. Yeah. Well, obviously, I do want to pack. It's important to me. Actually, and there's this game, if you're packing because you're going on holiday in the UK. Oh, she means who doesn't overpack? Yeah. If you're going on holiday in the UK, I have this thing, like we used to go camping and my ex would just like chuck it all in. No, and I'm far from OCD. There's an order to this. And there's an order for packing the shopping as well. You can't just chuck it in any old bag. You put the cold things together. You put the things that would get squashed on the top. Because if you put the bananas underneath, they're just mashed before you get home. It's obvious, isn't it? So why does not everybody think the way I think? See, this is what happens. We make judgments and we irritate ourselves by them. So yeah, we were on controller. Yeah, they often have this OCD, very prevalent in this. As long as we are in control, we will be safe. And also, yeah, doing a job properly. And the worst thing is that, yes, somebody else actually takes control and we don't trust that they'd be good at it. The anxiety pattern. Worrying never solved anything. Anxiety personalities get sucked into vicious cycles as there is always something else you can fear. So if you find yourself saying, oh, well, I could worry about worry, or I worry about not having something to worry about, then that's an anxiety pattern. Yes, tell my husband with Asperger's brain can't get the washing right at all. Yeah, there's also, you can have passive aggressive behaviour. This is what my ex used to do. He knew that if he did a job badly, I would then never expect him to do that job. So if I asked him to hang the washing up, he would hang it up and leave it draping in the mud. And I would, and the next time I wouldn't say hang the washing up. Or for a few times I'd say, this time, can you make sure it's all off the ground? And he'd do it again. But I think he had a bit of an Asperger's brain as well. But it was like, can he really not do that? Can he not see it's dragging in the ground? So then I just do it myself. My excuse always was, well, if I don't do it, nobody else will. And that, to a certain extent, was true. But that's what happens with helpers as well, that we just keep doing it. And if we keep doing it, then others won't do it anyway. Anxiety pattern. The world feels like an inherently scary place. We see fear in anything. So to stay safe, we believe we need to see every danger. The biggest plus of an anxiety person is if you need a risk assessment, ask someone with anxiety. They will tell you every single possibility of anything that could go wrong. And then you ask a controller to pack the bag for you for every eventuality. You see, and the perfectionist to make sure they've done it right. So, every single pattern is useful as well. An anxiety pattern person looks for an escape route in many things. So that escape route might be to have made excuses like, would you like to come to the pub tonight? Oh, yes, I'd like to go and socialise, they're thinking, but what if I feel anxious while I'm there? What if, oh, well, I'll try. Yeah, I'll see I might finish work late. So they're already preempting, what if I am not feeling up to it later? I'll make that excuse now. So if I don't turn up, they won't think bad of me. So really, anxiety patterns have a whole host of contingency plans and limiting beliefs that do not serve them well, because they're fortune telling, catastrophic thinking, preempting the worry. Georgia said, I used to be like that. Yeah, me too. You can tell the anxiety patterns in a theatre or a cinema. They sit in the aisle seat just in case they want to leave. I used to use the excuse, yeah, but I've got a bad back, I need to be able to stretch my legs out. But actually the truth was, I wanted to be able to leave if I wanted to be able to leave. So we place a lot of limitations on ourselves. The anxiety has often been with us since childhood. Nature and nurture anxiety has been found to be genetic to a certain extent as well. Yeah, Adele, I don't do that anymore. Yes, I do that a lot less either. Life's too short. Yes, but she does have to know where the exits are. And that's, a lot of people do that. And a lot of people don't, funnily enough. And that's the whole point, that if other people can live comfortably without anything terrible happening to them and not having these beliefs, then we too can learn to live comfortably. So it's not the situation that's the problem, is it? It's the way that we deal with it that counts. Anxiety patterns like authority. They often like doctors and teachers, policemen, anybody that seems safe and secure. They like to know what's happening. They like rules, they like regulations, they don't like unpredictability. So somebody in authority, they trust them. They trust that they will look after them, so they feel safe. A lot of people, we've talked a lot about what's gone on in the past. That's a great trigger for anxiety patterns. When we've been in trauma, we trigger the anxiety, but then the behaviors around that we no longer need to do because we are not in that situation now, we still do. So as with all of these, if they're formed in childhood, they're not relevant now. The problem personality, the rebel, the naughty one, the class clown, as I say, even the sick person, the person that, just doesn't do what they're meant to do or doesn't feel how they're meant to feel, because any attention is better than none. And these people are much more likely to get into problems with drink, drugs, to get in with the bad crowd. They can be quite angry, aggressive, because they have a chip on their shoulder. They feel like the world is against them. So even though, because they see, say, the love and affection and the kindness that their parents may give their siblings from being good, they don't think, I'll be good then. They've got to be their individual. They've got to stand up and be counted, but they feel dissatisfied because they don't feel loved, because they're being told off, even though there's a part of their brain going, any attention's better than none. So it's a very unsatisfying state to be in, and probably the worst one. Some people might be proud to be a problem person, but any attention is better than no attention. No one wants to admit to being this, as underneath they just want to be loved and accepted like everybody else. It's just, they're kind of preempting, if someone doesn't like me, so they might say, oh, well, like me for who I am. It's like they're pushing the boundaries all of the time. And if you don't like me for who I am, then I can blame you because it's your problem, not mine. Whereas underneath, it's because they don't think they're good enough. And so they've got to, they don't believe they can be seen for being good because they're not good, if that makes sense. So they crave attention. They might be a drama queen as well, rebel, naughty one, class clown. They feel angry and resentful, as if, what are you looking at? You think you're better than me, that type of thing. The other person wasn't thinking that. The other person was just carrying on. So they have this chip on their shoulder. And then, so one of the worst things for a problem person would be to show a weakness. Okay, Adele has a demanding princess as a friend. Yes, I know people like that too. So this is by no means an exhaustive list, and you can see from these personality types there's pluses and cons to it. The bottom line is, if you are not getting what you want or feeling how you want to feel, is it because you are doing things that are not actually serving you well, and you're doing them because of something you learned when you were like 2 years old? Okay, if you learn, so Georgia says, this sounds like my ex. He will never show weakness. He thinks he needs to be strong all the time. Yeah, and actually, if they could admit that they have weaknesses, then others could support them and help them, and they would get what they want. But instead they don't. They try and manipulate others to come into their world, and even when they come into their world, they don't want them in there. So it never works. It's great to be a helper. It makes you a kind person, but you should not measure yourself on others' responses to your kindness, and you should also not neglect your own needs in favour of others. So think about putting the oxygen mask on. We can all strive to achieve something, but we need to recognise when we have done well and be proud of ourselves. So we need to feel good about who we are, even if we still want to strive and do more, but we need to recognise our worth as well. And that we are worth more than our achievements, okay? Not just academic or something like that, that the whole person that we are is actually, if not more important. So to be a bit of a helper as well. It is great to lead and to take control. It gets a good job done. It might make a wonderful manager, but it's probably not a wonderful manager actually, because then you keep doing the stuff. You have to learn to delegate as well. So we don't want you to burn your way out of it. And as I said with the story of the butterfly, it is important that you learn to, for others to achieve as well. If you control others' behaviour, they don't learn the right and wrong and the general experiences of life, in particular with our children. We all get fearful and anxious at times, but seeing potential danger in everything is exhausting. Fear breeds fear. This pattern is very rarely has benefits unless you want your risk assessment done. So anxiety is something that it is completely a great idea to resolve. And as for the problem personality, you are hurting yourself more than you are hurting others. A little self-love will go a long, long way. Okay, whew. So those are the personality patterns. Did you see yourself in some of that? With peace, without judgment. This is not about saying I should, I shouldn't. Oh no, look, I'm a bad person because I do that. We all do what we do because it's what we've learned, and it's nearly always with the positive intention of protecting ourselves. We don't need protecting, we don't need the love, we don't need the same as we needed when we learnt these behaviours as children. We are now adults. We can set our own boundaries. We can break some rules if black and white ones. We can sing on a bus, and if someone else is doing it, without feeling too uncomfortable. So it's like, where do you want to go from here? And the bottom line is, if you love yourself and accept yourself and believe that you are enough, then you will be not only happier in yourself, but you will be an easier person to get on with. It doesn't mean people will take advantage of you. If you are the best of yourself, others can be the best of themselves with you. If you've got your defense mechanisms out, which a lot of these personality traits are, others will be defensive against you. So today's exercise is this hypnosis on being enough, finding the evidence, feeling the evidence, then projecting it into the future, into how you're going to move forward with this, and that short meditation for being loved, truly feeling like you are worth it, because you are. Everybody is worth it. Okay? No one should suffer needlessly. No one should punish themselves unless they've done something really bad. We're all in some way faulty. Otherwise we would be robots, and we are not. Your positivity journaling this week is going to be noticing your positive traits. So we've talked a bit about the negative ones, but I want you to write down lists of all your wonderful positive traits. So even if you are a helper and you're kind, then put that down as a positive and rejoice in it. Just don't measure yourself against others or their responses because you do that. So all of your positive traits, put it in your journal, and contact me if you need to. That is today's lesson. Whew, lots in there. It's all written down. I'm about to put it up in the course site before I go for my jab. This video will also go into the course site very, very shortly. It took about 2 hours to download last time. So that will be in there later today. If my arm works once it's been jabbed. I think I'm going for the left one so I can still do things with the right. Okay, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining me, and see you again next week when we are going to do some forgiveness, so of others and ourselves, before moving into rebooting. All right, see you then, and contact me if you need to. Bye bye for now.